The snow came down so hard that Gabriel Irving couldn't see 3 feet in front of his truck. And somewhere in the back seat, his 6-year-old daughter Lily was humming a nervous tune she always sang when she got scared. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white, as he eased off the gas pedal and tried to keep the vehicle steady on the increasingly invisible road. They were supposed to be home an hour ago, but what had started as light flurries during Lily's dental appointment had turned into a full-blown blizzard that the weather forecasters apparently hadn't seen coming. "Dad, I can't see anything," Lily said, her voice small. "I know, sweetheart. We're going to pull over and wait it out. This is too dangerous." Gabriel spotted what he hoped was the shoulder of the highway and carefully guided the truck to a stop. He killed the engine to conserve gas, then turned around to look at his daughter. She clutched her stuffed elephant, the one she had been carrying since she was 3, and her brown eyes were wide with worry. "Are we going to be okay?" "Of course we are. This is just a little snow. Your old dad has been through worse." He tried to sound confident, even though his own heart was pounding. The temperature was already dropping inside the cab, and he only had a quarter tank of gas left. If they ran the heater too long, they would be stranded with no heat at all. He pulled off his heavy work jacket and passed it back to Lily. "Put this over your blanket, baby, but you'll be cold. I've got my flannel, I'm good." The truth was that his flannel shirt was already damp from the snow he had brushed off before getting in the truck after the appointment, but Lily didn't need to know that. He turned the key just enough to get the battery working and checked his phone. No signal. The storm must have taken out the towers. Through the white curtain of snow, Gabriel could barely make out shapes on the road. Then he saw something move, a darker shadow against the white, and he squinted. Someone was out there, walking through the storm. Without thinking, he pushed open his door. "Stay here, Lily. Lock the doors." "Where are you going?" "Someone's out there." He jumped out before she could protest, and the wind hit him like a physical force. The cold cut through his damp flannel immediately, but he pushed forward, following the shadow he had seen. Hey, you need help." The figure turned, and Gabriel realized it was a woman. She was stumbling through the knee-deep snow, her arms wrapped around herself. She wore what looked like a business suit and completely inappropriate shoes for a blizzard. No coat, no hat, nothing. She was going to die out here. Gabriel closed the distance between them in a few strides and grabbed her arm. She looked up at him with startling green eyes, her face pale and her lips already tinged blue. "Come on, my truck is right there." She nodded, unable to speak, and he half carried, half dragged her through the snow to his truck. Lily had unlocked the door as soon as she saw him coming, and Gabriel practically shoved the woman into the front passenger seat before running around to the driver's side. Once inside, he slammed the door and turned the ignition, cranking the heat up as high as it would go. The woman was shaking violently, her teeth chattering so hard she couldn't form words. Gabriel looked at her hands and saw they were bright red, her fingers curled into claws. Frostbite. He had seen it before when he was younger, working construction in the winter. "Lily, pass me that thermos under your seat," he said, keeping his voice calm. His daughter quickly found it and handed it forward. Gabriel opened it, and the smell of coffee filled the truck. He had filled it that morning, and it was still lukewarm. He tried to hand it to the woman, but she couldn't grip it. Her hands were shaking too much. "Here," Gabriel said softly. He set the thermos in the cup holder and took both of her hands in his. They were like ice, small and delicate compared to his calloused, work-roughened hands. He began rubbing them gently, trying to restore circulation. "You're going to be okay, just breathe, slow breaths." The woman stared at him, still unable to speak, but something flickered in those green eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or surprise. Gabriel kept rubbing her hands, tucking them against his chest, sharing his body heat. He could feel Lily watching from the backseat, but his daughter stayed quiet, understanding somehow that this was serious. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 5 minutes, the woman's shaking began to subside. Color started returning to her face, and her breathing became more regular. Gabriel kept holding her hands, kept warming them, until finally she spoke. "Thank you." Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I thought I was going to die out there." "What were you doing walking in a blizzard?" Gabriel asked, but his tone was concerned rather than accusatory. "Car accident. My driver lost control and we went into a ditch about a mile back. My phone was dead." "I tried to walk to find help, but I got turned around in the snow." She looked down at their hands, his large and scarred, hers now warming against his palms. "I'm Andrea Nelson. Gabriel Irving. That's my daughter Lily in the back." "Hi," Lily said shyly. Andrea turned as much as she could in her seat and gave Lily a weak smile. "Hi, Lily. Thank you for sharing your dad with me. You looked like you needed him more," Lily said with the simple honesty of children. Gabriel felt his chest tighten at his daughter's words. She was such a good kid, always had been, even after her mother had walked out on them 2 years ago. Sarah had decided that being a wife and mother to a small-town family wasn't glamorous enough for her, so she had packed her bags and moved to Los Angeles to pursue her dream of being an actress. The divorce papers had arrived 3 months later, along with a note saying she was signing over full custody. Lily had cried for weeks, and Gabriel had felt like a failure for not being enough to make his ex-wife want to stay, but they had survived. He worked hard at his job as a mechanic, picked up side jobs on weekends, and made sure Lily had everything she needed. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and that had been enough. Until moments like this, when he was stuck on the side of a highway in a blizzard with a quarter tank of gas and a stranger who had nearly frozen to death. "Is your driver okay?" Gabriel asked Andrea, still holding her hands. They were warmer now, but he was afraid to let go too soon. "I don't know. He was conscious when I left, but he told me to go find help. The car wouldn't start, and he gave me his phone, but it wouldn't turn on. I should have stayed with him, but I panicked." Her voice cracked. "What if he's dying in that car right now?" "We can't get to him in this storm," Gabriel said gently. "The visibility is less than 5 feet. We would get lost ourselves, and then there would be 3 people in danger instead of 1. Your driver told you to find help, which means he wanted you safe. As soon as this lets up even a little, we'll find him, I promise." Andrea nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Gabriel realized he was still holding her hands and started to pull away, but she gripped his fingers tightly. "Please don't. They're finally starting to feel normal again." So Gabriel kept holding her hands, and the 3 of them sat in the warming truck while the blizzard raged outside. He glanced at the gas gauge nervously. They had maybe 30 minutes of heat left before he would have to make a choice about conserving fuel. "Tell me something," Andrea said suddenly. "To distract me, tell me about you and Lily." Gabriel glanced back at his daughter, who had wrapped herself in his jacket and was watching them with curious eyes. "Not much to tell. I'm a mechanic. Lily's in 1st grade. We live in a small house on the edge of town. Pretty boring stuff." "I don't think it's boring," Andrea said. She had stopped shaking completely now, and there was color in her cheeks. She was beautiful, Gabriel realized, now that she wasn't on the verge of freezing to death. Probably in her early 30s like him, with dark hair that fell past her shoulders and those striking green eyes. "Tell me more. What does Lily like to do?" "I like to draw," Lily piped up from the back seat. "And I like dinosaurs." "My teacher says girls aren't supposed to like dinosaurs, but Dad says that's silly." "Your dad is right," Andrea said with a genuine smile. "Dinosaurs are for everyone. What's your favorite?" "Stegosaurus." Because of the plates on its back, Andrea turned back to Gabriel. "You're raising her right." "I'm trying," Gabriel admitted. He finally, reluctantly released Andrea's hands. They were warm now, no longer in danger. She flexed her fingers experimentally and winced. They hurt. "That's actually a good sign. Means the feeling is coming back." Gabriel reached for the thermos and unscrewed the cap. "Think you can hold this now? The coffee's not hot anymore, but it's better than nothing." Andrea took the thermos with both hands, wrapping her fingers around it carefully. She took a sip and made a face. "It's terrible." Yeah, I make bad coffee. It's one of my many talents. Gabriel tried for humor, but he was watching the gas gauge again. 20 minutes, maybe less. Andrea noticed where he was looking. You're worried about the gas. We'll be fine, Gabriel said automatically, the same way he always told Lily everything would be fine even when he wasn't sure how he would make rent or buy groceries. The storm has to let up eventually. Gabriel, Andrea's voice was serious. Don't lie to me, how bad is it? He met her eyes and saw that she could handle the truth. We've got maybe 15 minutes of heat left. After that, we'll have to shut off the engine and try to keep warm with what we have. I've got an emergency blanket in the back, and Lily's got my jacket. We'll huddle together if we have to. People have survived worse. My driver's name is Thomas, Andrea said quietly. He's been with my family for 15 years. He has 3 kids and a wife who makes the best apple pie I've ever tasted. He taught me to drive when I was 16, and he's never once judged me for any of my mistakes. I need him to be okay. He will be, Gabriel said, and he meant it. Thomas sounds like a tough guy. He's probably keeping himself warm and waiting for rescue just like we are. When this clears, we'll find him together. Andrea nodded and took another sip of the terrible coffee. You didn't ask me why I was in a car with a driver, why I'm wearing a suit in the middle of a blizzard. Not my business, Gabriel said. He cranked the heat down a little, trying to stretch their remaining fuel. Most people would be curious. Most people aren't trying to keep their kid warm in a blizzard. Gabriel glanced at the windshield. The snow seemed to be falling just as hard as before. He checked his phone again. Still no signal. I'm a businesswoman, Andrea said. I was coming back from a meeting 3 towns over. I own a company that makes outdoor equipment, which is ironic considering I almost just froze to death outdoors. Lily laughed from the back seat, and even Gabriel cracked a smile. That is pretty ironic. I design winter gear, camping supplies, survival equipment. And here I am, saved by a stranger in a truck because I wasn't prepared for a snowstorm. My board of directors would have a field day with this. Everyone makes mistakes, Gabriel said. You couldn't have known the storm would get this bad this fast. Thomas knew. He told me we should pull over an hour ago, but I insisted we keep going. I had another meeting scheduled and I didn't want to miss it. I never miss meetings. Andrea's voice was bitter. And now Thomas is out there because I was too stubborn to listen to him. Gabriel understood stubbornness. He understood the pressure of feeling like you couldn't afford to waste time or miss opportunities. You were doing what you thought was right. That's all any of us can do. The truck's heater sputtered, and Gabriel made the decision. He shut off the engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening, broken only by the howl of the wind outside. Okay, here's what we're going to do, Gabriel said calmly. Lily, I need you to climb up here with us. Andrea, move to the middle. We're going to sit close together and share body heat. Lily gets my jacket and the emergency blanket. We'll be fine until the storm passes. They rearranged themselves, and Gabriel tried not to notice how good Andrea smelled even after nearly freezing to death, or how natural it felt when she pressed against his side. Lily climbed between them, and Gabriel wrapped his right arm around his daughter while Andrea helped tuck the blanket around all 3 of them. His left arm ended up around Andrea's shoulders, and she leaned into him without hesitation. I'm sorry, she said softly. This is all my fault. Stop apologizing. You didn't make it snow. Gabriel pulled them both closer. The cold was already seeping into the truck, but with the 3 of them huddled together, it was manageable. We're going to tell stories until the storm stops. Lily, you start. Tell Andrea about the time we went fishing and you caught that huge bass. Lily launched into her story with enthusiasm, her voice bright in the cold darkness of the truck. Gabriel felt Andrea relax against him as she listened, and he wondered about this woman who designed outdoor equipment and rode around with a driver. She clearly had money, more than he could probably imagine, but she wasn't acting like it. She had said thank you, had worried about her driver, had treated Lily with kindness and respect. The wind rocked the truck and Lily's story trailed off. Dad, I'm scared. I know, baby, but we're okay, we're together. Gabriel kissed the top of her head. Gabriel's right, Andrea said, and there was something fierce in her voice. We're going to be okay. The three of us are going to wait out this storm together, and then we're going to find Thomas, and everyone's going to go home safe. I promise. It was a promise she had no way of keeping, but Lily seemed to take comfort in it. Gabriel felt something shift in his chest, some emotion he hadn't let himself feel in a long time. Here was this stranger, this woman who had literally stumbled into their lives an hour ago, and she was promising his daughter that everything would be okay. Sarah had never made promises like that, not even when she was still around. Tell me a story, Lily said to Andrea. About you. Andrea was quiet for a moment. Let me think. Okay, when I was about your age, maybe a little older, my dad took me camping for the first time. I was so excited. We drove up into the mountains and we set up this tent, and my dad taught me how to build a fire. But that night, when it got dark, I got really scared. All the sounds in the forest seemed so loud and strange, I wanted to go home. What did your dad do? Lily asked. He took me outside the tent and showed me the stars. There were millions of them, more than I had ever seen in my life. And he told me that the forest wasn't scary, it was just alive. Every sound was an animal going about its business, living its life. The owls were hunting, the crickets were singing, the trees were growing. We were just visitors in their home, and we needed to respect that. After that, I wasn't scared anymore. I fell in love with the outdoors that night. Is that why you make outdoor stuff? Lily asked. Yes, I want to help people experience what I experienced, the beauty and the adventure. Andrea's voice was wistful. Though I seem to have forgotten my own lessons about respecting nature and being prepared. You'll remember next time, Gabriel said. He could feel her shivering slightly against him, and he pulled her closer. The cold was getting worse. His breath was visible in the truck now. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. They took turns telling stories, anything to keep their minds off the cold. Gabriel talked about learning to fix cars with his grandfather. Lily told them about her best friend at school. Andrea shared stories about business trips gone wrong, and the time she accidentally went to a meeting with her shirt on inside out. Gabriel found himself laughing more than he had in months, and even though they were stuck in a freezing truck during a blizzard, he felt something like contentment. Andrea had a quick wit and a self-deprecating sense of humor that he appreciated. She asked Lily questions and actually listened to the answers. She didn't talk down to his daughter or treat her like she was stupid just because she was 6. Gabriel, Andrea said after a particularly long silence. Can I ask you something personal? Sure. Lily mentioned it's usually just the two of you. Her mom, Gabriel felt Lily tense against him, and he rubbed her arm reassuringly. Left about 2 years ago, decided family life wasn't for her. She signed over custody and moved to California. We haven't heard from her since. I'm sorry. Don't be, we're better off. Gabriel meant it. The first few months after Sarah left had been hell, but once they had adjusted, life had actually improved. No more walking on eggshells, no more arguments, no more feeling like he was failing because he couldn't give Sarah the life she wanted. It's just me and Lily now, and that's okay. We make it work. You make it work very well from what I can see. Lily is a wonderful kid. Pride swelled in Gabriel's chest. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. My mom didn't want me, Lily said suddenly, her voice small. She said I was too much work. Gabriel felt like his heart was being ripped out of his chest. Baby, that's not true. Your mom had some problems she needed to work through. It wasn't about you. But she left. I know, and that was her loss, not yours. You are perfect exactly as you are. Gabriel kissed her head again. I wouldn't trade you for anything in the world. Andrea's arm came around Lily from the other side, and suddenly his daughter was being hugged by both of them. Your dad is right, Andrea said softly. Sometimes adults make mistakes, but you need to know that those mistakes aren't because of anything you did wrong. You're smart and funny and brave. Any parent would be lucky to have you. Lily sniffled, and Gabriel realized she was crying. He held her tighter, letting her get out emotions she usually kept bottled up. Andrea caught his eye over Lily's head, and something passed between them, some understanding that didn't need words. The wind outside seemed to be dying down. Gabriel risked unwrapping one arm to wipe the condensation off the windshield. The snow was still falling, but he could see farther now, maybe 10 or 15 feet. The worst of the storm was passing. "Look," he said, pointing. "It's letting up." Andrea leaned forward to look, and hope lit up her face. "Do you think we can find Thomas now?" Gabriel checked his phone. Still no signal, but he had a compass app that would work without one. "How far back did you say your car was?" "Maybe a mile. We were going around a curve when we lost control." "Okay, you two stay here. I'm going to see if I can spot it." "Absolutely not," Andrea said immediately. "You're not going out there alone. What if you get lost? What if you collapse? No way." "Someone needs to stay with Lily." "I'll be okay, Dad," Lily said, though her voice shook a little. "If you think you can find Andrea's driver, you should try, but you should take Andrea with you." "Two people is safer than one, right?" Gabriel looked at his daughter, once again amazed by her bravery. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. I'll lock the doors and keep the blanket. You have your phone for light, right?" "Right." Gabriel squeezed her shoulder. "We'll be as fast as we can." "If we're not back in 20 minutes, you stay put no matter what. Someone will find you when the road's clear." "Okay." Gabriel and Andrea bundled up as best they could. He gave Andrea his flannel shirt to wear over her suit jacket, and he kept just his thermal undershirt. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. They checked that Lily was secure with the doors locked, and then they ventured out into the storm. The snow was still falling, but not with the same violent intensity as before. Gabriel could make out the shapes of other cars that had pulled over, dark lumps along the highway. He used his compass app to make sure they were heading the right direction, and Andrea stayed close beside him, her hand gripping his arm. They walked for what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 minutes. The cold bit through Gabriel's thin shirt, and he knew Andrea had to be freezing despite the flannel. Then he saw it, tire tracks leading off the road and down into a shallow ditch. The dark shape of a luxury car, nose first in the snow. "Thomas!" Andrea shouted, pulling away from Gabriel and stumbling down the embankment. Gabriel followed, his boots sinking deep into the snow. They reached the car, and Andrea yanked open the driver's door. A man was slumped over the steering wheel, motionless. Andrea let out a sound of pure anguish, but Gabriel pushed past her and felt for a pulse. It was there, steady and strong. Thomas had his coat collar pulled up around his ears and his arms tucked inside his jacket. Smart man, conserving heat. "He's alive," Gabriel said. "Just unconscious. Probably hypothermia. We need to wake him up and get him moving." Together, they managed to rouse Thomas. He was disoriented and weak, but he recognized Andrea immediately. "Miss Nelson," he mumbled, "you're safe." "I'm safe because of you," Andrea said, tears streaming down her face. "Come on, we need to get you to the truck. Can you walk?" With Gabriel on one side and Andrea on the other, they got Thomas up the embankment and onto the road. The walk back to the truck was agonizing. Thomas's weight was substantial, and Gabriel's muscles screamed with the effort of half carrying the man through the snow. But they made it. Lily unlocked the doors as soon as she saw them coming, and they managed to get Thomas into the back seat. Gabriel started the engine, not caring anymore about conserving gas. They needed heat, and they needed it now. The truck roared to life, and he cranked the heater to maximum. Andrea climbed in the back with Thomas and Lily, checking the driver's pulse and trying to get him warmed up. Gabriel pulled off his boots and handed them back. "Put these on his feet. We need to warm his extremities slowly." Andrea didn't question him, just did as he said. Gabriel turned the interior light on and watched in the rearview mirror as the color slowly returned to Thomas's face. The man's eyes fluttered open and he looked around in confusion. "You're in Gabriel's truck," Andrea explained. "He saved both of us. How do you feel?" "Cold," Thomas croaked. "But alive, thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Gabriel said. "We're still stuck on this highway." "But the snow's letting up. I think we can make it to town if we take it slow." "Thomas, you need a hospital?" "I don't think so. Just need to warm up." Gabriel put the truck in gear and eased back onto the highway. The snow was definitely lighter now, falling in gentle flurries instead of the blinding sheets from before. Other cars were starting their engines and pulling back onto the road. Gabriel drove carefully, his eyes scanning for any sign of danger, and slowly they made their way toward town. The highway opened up after a few miles, and the snow stopped completely. Stars appeared overhead, bright and clear. Gabriel saw the lights of town in the distance and felt relief wash over him. They had made it. He drove straight to the hospital. Andrea protested, saying Thomas was fine, but Gabriel insisted. Better safe than sorry. Besides, you should both get checked out. At the hospital, the emergency room was chaos. The blizzard had caused dozens of accidents and emergencies. But Andrea walked up to the front desk, said something Gabriel couldn't hear, and suddenly nurses were appearing with wheelchairs and rushing Thomas away. A doctor came to examine Andrea despite her protests that she was fine. Gabriel stood in the waiting room with Lily, feeling out of place in his work pants and thermal shirt. A nurse eventually came over and checked them both too, declaring them cold but unharmed. Then they waited while Andrea and Thomas were examined more thoroughly. An hour passed. Then 2. Lily fell asleep with her head on Gabriel's lap, and he stroked her hair absently while he watched the emergency room activity. Finally, Andrea emerged. She had been given scrubs to wear, and her hair was damp from a shower. She looked tired but healthy. "Thomas is okay," she said, sitting down next to Gabriel. "Minor frostbite on his fingers and toes, but nothing permanent. They want to keep him overnight for observation, but he's going to be fine. Thanks to you. I'm glad. I mean it, Gabriel. If you hadn't found me, I would have died out there, and if we hadn't gotten to Thomas when we did, he might have frozen to death in that car." Andrea's voice was thick with emotion. "I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same." Andrea laughed, but it was without humor. "You'd be surprised how few people actually would. I've learned that lesson over the years." Gabriel looked down at his sleeping daughter. "I'd want someone to help Lily if she was in trouble, just paying it forward." They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the hospital washing over them. Eventually, Andrea spoke again. "Can I take you home? You and Lily. I've called for another car. We've got my truck." "I know, but you must be exhausted. Let me do this, please." "You can come back for your truck tomorrow." Gabriel was too tired to argue. When the car arrived, driven by another professional-looking man in a suit, Gabriel carried Lily out and carefully placed her in the back seat. Andrea slid in next to her, and Gabriel went around to the other side. The interior of the car was warm and luxurious, with leather seats and enough space for all of them to spread out comfortably. "Where do you live?" Andrea asked. Gabriel gave the address, and the driver nodded and pulled away from the hospital. The roads were clear now, the snow already being pushed aside by plows. It was hard to believe that just a few hours ago they had been in mortal danger. The drive to Gabriel's house took 15 minutes. It was a small place on the edge of town, with peeling paint and a yard that needed work. Gabriel felt a flash of embarrassment as they pulled up. He knew what it looked like, especially compared to the kind of places Andrea probably lived in. But Andrea didn't seem to notice or care about the house's condition. She helped Gabriel carry Lily inside, waiting patiently while he fumbled with his keys. The interior was neat if shabby, with second-hand furniture and walls that could use a fresh coat of paint. Gabriel led Andrea to Lily's room, and together they tucked his daughter into bed. Lily stirred slightly but didn't wake. Back in the living room, Andrea lingered by the door. "Thank you again, for everything. You've already thanked me about a dozen times. I'll probably thank you a dozen more before I leave." Andrea smiled, and Gabriel felt his breath catch. She really was beautiful, and more than that, she was kind and brave. "I mean it, though. What you did today, that was heroic. I just did what needed doing. That's what makes it heroic. Andrea pulled out her phone. Can I have your number? I'd like to check in on you and Lily. Make sure you're both okay after today. Gabriel rattled off his number and Andrea typed it in. Her phone buzzed in her hand and she glanced at the screen inside. I need to go, but I'll call you tomorrow, okay? Okay. She started to leave, then turned back. On impulse, she wrapped her arms around Gabriel and hugged him tightly. He stood frozen for a moment, surprised, then returned the embrace. She was small against him, the top of her head barely reaching his chin, and she smelled like hospital soap and something floral underneath. Thank you, she whispered against his chest. Then she was gone, climbing back into the car and disappearing into the night. Gabriel stood in his doorway for a long time after she left, his hand unconsciously touching the spot on his chest where her head had rested. Something had happened today, something more than just surviving a storm. He had felt a connection with Andrea, something he hadn't felt in years, not since before Sarah, if he was being honest with himself, but Andrea was out of his league. She had drivers and expensive cars and a company she owned. He was a mechanic who lived paycheck to paycheck and drove a truck with 250,000 miles on it. Whatever he had felt today, it was just adrenaline and proximity. Nothing more. He locked the door and went to check on Lily one more time before heading to his own room. Tomorrow, life would go back to normal. He would go to work, pick Lily up from school, make dinner, help with homework. The routine would continue, and today would fade into just another story they told. Gabriel climbed into bed and closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. He kept seeing green eyes and feeling phantom warmth in his hands. The next morning came too early. Gabriel dragged himself out of bed, every muscle in his body aching from yesterday's ordeal. He made breakfast for Lily, who bounced around the kitchen with her usual morning energy, seemingly unaffected by their brush with death. Kids were resilient like that. Is Andrea going to call us today? Lily asked around a mouthful of cereal. She said she would, but she's probably busy. She runs a whole company, remember? I liked her. She was nice. Gabriel had liked her too, more than was probably smart. He got Lily ready for school and dropped her off, then headed to work. His boss at the garage, a gruff man named Pete, took one look at Gabriel and shook his head. You look like hell, Irving. Got stuck in the blizzard yesterday. Long story. The whole town's got blizzard stories today. Take it easy, okay? We're not slammed. Gabriel spent the day working on routine maintenance, oil changes and tire rotations, his mind wandering. He kept checking his phone, which was stupid because Andrea probably had 100 things more important to do than call some mechanic she had met during a storm. But at 2 p.m, his phone rang. Unknown number. Gabriel wiped his greasy hands on a rag and answered. Gabriel. It's Andrea. His heart did a stupid little flip. Hey, how are you feeling? Sore and tired, but alive. Thomas is being released from the hospital this afternoon. He's going to make a full recovery. Andrea's voice was warm. How's Lily? Bouncing off the walls like nothing happened. I swear kids don't process trauma the same way we do. Andrea laughed. She's a tough kid. Wonder where she gets that from. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important, just easy conversation that flowed naturally. Andrea asked about his job, and he found himself telling her about the cars he was working on. She told him about a design meeting she had that morning for a new line of winter tents. It felt normal and comfortable, and Gabriel almost forgot that they were from completely different worlds. Listen, Andrea said eventually, I want to see you again, you and Lily both. Would you let me take you to dinner? A proper thank you. You don't have to do that. I want to. Please, let me do this. Gabriel thought about saying no. He thought about all the reasons why getting involved with Andrea was a bad idea. But then he thought about how she had promised Lily they would be okay, and how she had cried over Thomas, and how right it had felt to hold her hands in his. Okay, dinner. When? Tonight. I can pick you both up at 6. It was too soon, Gabriel thought. He needed more time to convince himself this was a bad idea, but he found himself saying, "6 works." He picked Lily up from school and told her about dinner. She was so excited, she could barely contain herself, spinning around the living room and asking 100 questions about where they were going and what she should wear. Gabriel helped her pick out a nice dress, one of the few fancy items of clothing she owned, and he dug through his own closet for something that wasn't torn or stained. He settled on a button-down shirt and his one pair of decent jeans. They were a little worn, but they would have to do. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw a tired man in his early 30s with lines around his eyes and calluses on his hands. Nothing special. But he combed his hair and tried to look presentable anyway. The car that arrived at 6 was the same one from last night, but Andrea was inside this time. She stepped out wearing a simple blue dress that somehow made her eyes look even more green. Her hair was down, falling in waves past her shoulders, and Gabriel forgot how to breathe for a second. "Hi," she said, smiling. "Hi," he managed. Lily came running out of the house and threw her arms around Andrea's waist. Andrea laughed and hugged her back, and something in Gabriel's chest cracked open just a little bit more. The restaurant Andrea had chosen was nice, the kind of place Gabriel had never been able to afford to take anyone. The host greeted Andrea by name and led them to a quiet table in the back. Lily's eyes were huge as she looked around at the fancy decorations and white tablecloths. "Is this okay?" Andrea asked, suddenly looking uncertain. "I didn't even think to ask if you had a preference." "This is great," Gabriel said, even though he was already calculating how much the meal was going to cost and whether he could somehow pay for it. Dinner was wonderful. Andrea ordered things Gabriel had never tried before, and she encouraged Lily to experiment with different foods. His daughter tried escargot and made a face that had all 3 of them laughing. They talked and ate and laughed some more, and Gabriel felt himself relaxing into the evening. "So tell me more about this outdoor company of yours," Gabriel said over dessert. "How'd you get into that?" Andrea's face lit up. "Remember the camping story I told yesterday about my dad and the stars? After that trip, I was hooked. I spent every summer camping, hiking, exploring. When I got to college, I studied business and design. I wanted to create equipment that would make the outdoors accessible to everyone, not just experienced adventurers." "That's really cool," Gabriel said, meaning it. "I started small, just selling gear online out of my apartment. But it grew, and now we have stores in 6 states and we sell internationally. We've stayed true to the original mission, though, quality equipment at reasonable prices." Andrea paused. "Well, reasonable for outdoor gear anyway. Your dad must be proud." Andrea's expression shifted, became sad. "He died 4 years ago. Heart attack. But yeah, I think he would have been proud. He always believed in me, even when the business was just a crazy idea." Gabriel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you." Andrea squeezed back. "What about your family?" "Are your parents around?" "My dad died when I was young. Construction accident." "My mom passed about 5 years ago, cancer." Gabriel shrugged. "It's been just me for a while now, me and Lily against the world." "That must be hard." "We manage. You learn to rely on yourself when you have to." Lily had been quietly eating her chocolate cake, but now she spoke up. "Dad never gives up, even when things are really hard." Gabriel felt his throat tighten. "Neither do you, baby." Andrea was watching them both with an expression Gabriel couldn't quite read. "You two are pretty special, you know that?" After dinner, Andrea insisted on driving them home again. This time, when they pulled up to the house, she got out of the car too. Gabriel invited her in, and she accepted. Lily gave them a good-night hug and headed to her room, leaving Gabriel and Andrea alone in the living room. "Today was really nice," Andrea said softly. "I can't remember the last time I enjoyed a dinner that much." "Me either," Gabriel admitted. They were standing close together, and he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "Andrea, I need to ask you something." "Okay." "Why are you here? I mean really here. You thanked us for saving your life, you took us to dinner, that's more than enough, but you keep coming back. Why? Andrea was quiet for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face. The truth. Yesterday, when you took my hands in yours and warmed them, I felt something I haven't felt in a long time. Safety. Kindness. Someone caring about me not because of my money or my company, but just because I was a person who needed help. She took a shaky breath. And then I got to know you and Lily, and I realized you're both exactly what you appeared to be. Good people. Real people. I don't have a lot of that in my life, Gabriel. Most people want something from me, but you don't. I don't know what to say to that. You don't have to say anything, I just wanted you to know why I'm here, because I like you, both of you. And if you don't want me to keep coming around, I'll understand. But I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to be part of your lives. Gabriel looked at this incredible woman standing in his shabby living room, and he knew he was already falling for her. It was too fast and probably too dangerous, but he couldn't stop it any more than he could have stopped the blizzard yesterday. I'd like that, he said quietly. I'd like that a lot. Andrea smiled, and it was like the sun coming out. She stepped closer, rising on her toes, and kissed his cheek. Good, then I'll call you tomorrow. You better. After she left, Gabriel stood in his living room and touched the spot on his cheek where her lips had been. He was in so much trouble, but he couldn't bring himself to care. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Andrea would call every day, sometimes just to talk for a few minutes, sometimes for hours. She started coming by in the evenings, bringing dinner or just hanging out. Lily adored her, and Gabriel found himself looking forward to Andrea's visits like a teenager with a crush. They went to the park together, the three of them, and watched Lily play on the swings. They went to a movie and shared popcorn in the dark. Andrea came to Lily's school play and cheered louder than anyone else. Slowly, carefully, they were building something together. But Gabriel couldn't shake the feeling that it was all going to come crashing down. Andrea's life was in a different stratosphere than his. She flew to business meetings in other states. She made decisions that affected hundreds of employees. She lived in a world of money and power that he couldn't even imagine. One evening, about a month after the blizzard, Andrea showed up at his door looking troubled. Gabriel let her in, and they sat on his worn couch while Lily did homework at the kitchen table. "What's wrong?" Gabriel asked. "I need to tell you something, and I'm afraid it's going to change how you see me." Andrea twisted her hands together. "I haven't been completely honest with you about my company." Gabriel's stomach dropped. "Okay. When I said I own an outdoor equipment company, that's true. But it's bigger than I made it sound. Much bigger. Nelson Outdoor Enterprises is a billion-dollar company, Gabriel. I'm not just well off, I'm a billionaire." Gabriel stared at her. "A billionaire?" "Yes, I didn't tell you before because I wanted you to get to know me, not my money. But you deserve to know the truth. My life is complicated. I have responsibilities and obligations that I can't escape. And if we're going to keep doing this, keep seeing each other, you need to understand what that means." Gabriel stood up and walked to the window, trying to process what she had just told him. A billionaire. He had been falling for a woman who probably spent more on shoes than he made in a year. "Say something," Andrea said, her voice small. "I don't know what to say. That's a lot to take in." "Are you angry that I didn't tell you sooner?" Gabriel turned to look at her. She looked genuinely worried, her hands still twisted together, her eyes wide. "No, I get why you didn't. You wanted me to see you for who you are, not what you have. I can't fault you for that. But I don't know if I can be part of that world, Andrea. I'm a mechanic. I live paycheck to paycheck. I can't give you fancy dinners or expensive gifts. I can't even afford to take Lily to Disneyland like I've been promising for 2 years. How could I possibly fit into your life?" Andrea stood and crossed to him, taking his hands in hers. Her hands were small and warm, and Gabriel had a flash of memory from that first day, holding those same hands while the blizzard raged around them. "I'm not asking you to fit into my life," she said fiercely. "I'm asking if I can fit into yours. I don't care about fancy dinners or expensive gifts. I care about you and Lily. I care about the way you make me laugh and the way you always put your daughter first. I care about how you saved my life without expecting anything in return. Andrea. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a month. But Gabriel, I'm falling in love with you. And if you can't feel the same way because of my money, I understand. But please don't push me away because you think you're not good enough. You're more than good enough. You're everything. Gabriel looked into her green eyes and saw that she meant every word. This brilliant, beautiful, wealthy woman was standing in his living room and telling him she loved him. It was insane. It was impossible. It was everything he wanted. I'm falling in love with you too, he admitted. I've been trying not to, but I can't help it. You're amazing, Andrea, smart and funny and kind. You make me feel like I can be more than I am. You're already more than you think you are. Gabriel pulled her close and kissed her. It was their first kiss, and it felt like coming home. Andrea melted against him, her arms coming up around his neck, and for a moment the whole world narrowed down to just the two of them. You, kissing? Lily's voice came from the kitchen, and they broke apart laughing. Sorry, baby, Gabriel called back. It's okay, I like Andrea. You should kiss her if you want to. Andrea buried her face in Gabriel's chest, her shoulders shaking with laughter. I like Lily too. You're both stuck with me now. Promise? Gabriel asked. Promise. But promises were complicated, and Gabriel learned that over the next few months. Andrea had been serious about her obligations. She traveled frequently for business, sometimes gone for days at a time. She had board meetings and investor calls and a million other responsibilities that pulled her away. Gabriel understood, but that didn't make it easier. Then there was the media attention. Somehow, some tabloid got wind of the fact that Andrea Nelson was dating a mechanic, and suddenly Gabriel's face was in magazines and online articles. The headlines were mostly kind, painting their relationship as some kind of fairy tale romance, but the attention was overwhelming. Reporters showed up at the garage where he worked. Photographers followed them when they went out. Lily handled it better than Gabriel did, treating the whole thing like an adventure. But Gabriel worried constantly. He worried about whether he was doing the right thing for his daughter. He worried about whether Andrea would eventually realize she could do better. He worried about fitting into a world where people had drivers and private planes and summer homes. The first time Andrea invited him to one of her company events, a formal gala fundraiser, Gabriel almost said no. But Lily insisted he should go, and Andrea looked so hopeful that he couldn't refuse. He rented a tux that he definitely couldn't afford, and Andrea sent a car to pick him up. The gala was held in a hotel ballroom that probably cost more to rent for one night than Gabriel's house was worth. There were hundreds of people in expensive clothes, drinking champagne and making small talk. Andrea found Gabriel as soon as he arrived, looking stunning in a floor-length emerald gown, and she took his arm possessively. You look incredible, she said. I feel like a fraud. You're not. You belong here just as much as anyone else. More than most of them, actually. Andrea squeezed his arm. Just be yourself, that's all I need. Gabriel tried. He really did. But every conversation felt like a minefield. People would ask what he did, and when he said he was a mechanic, their faces would do this subtle shift. They would smile politely and change the subject, or worse, they would become overly enthusiastic, as if him having a working-class job was some kind of quirky character trait. The worst part was when a man in an expensive suit, someone Andrea introduced as one of her board members, pulled Gabriel aside. Word of advice, the man said, his tone friendly but his eyes cold. Be careful with Andrea. She's got a good heart, but she's also got $1 billion company to protect. Don't do anything to embarrass her or damage the brand. Gabriel had never punched someone at a fancy gala before, but he came close. Instead, he excused himself and found a balcony where he could get some air. He stood there in the cold night, wondering what the hell he was doing. Andrea found him 10 minutes later. Hey, you okay? One of your board members just warned me not to embarrass you. Andrea's face went hard. Who? Doesn't matter. It matters to me. Gabriel, look at me. She waited until he met her eyes. I don't care what anyone on my board thinks about my personal life. They work for me, not the other way around. And if anyone makes you feel like you don't belong with me, they're wrong. You belong wherever I am. Do I, though? Andrea, I love you. God help me, I love you so much it scares me. But I don't know if I can do this. This world you live in, it's not mine. I don't understand the rules. There are no rules. Not for us. Andrea took his hands, and Gabriel was reminded once again of that first day in the blizzard. I need you to hear me. I have a lot of money. I have a company and responsibilities and all these things that take up my time. But none of that matters as much as you and Lily. You two have become my family, and I don't want to lose that. You're not going to lose us. Then stop trying to push me away because you think you're not good enough. You are good enough. You're more than good enough. Gabriel pulled her close and held her, breathing in the scent of her perfume, feeling the solid warmth of her in his arms. I'm sorry. I just get in my head sometimes. I know, but we're in this together, okay? Both of us. We'll figure it out. They went back to the gala hand in hand, and Gabriel made it through the rest of the night. But the incident stayed with him, a reminder that no matter how much Andrea said it didn't matter, there was still a huge gulf between their lives. Things came to a head about 6 months after the blizzard. Gabriel was working late at the garage when his phone rang. It was Andrea, and she sounded stressed. Can you come over? I need to talk to you about something. Gabriel's heart sank. This was it. She was going to break up with him. He cleaned up, told Pete he was leaving, and drove to Andrea's house. He had been there a few times before, but the size of the place still took his breath away. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was huge, with sprawling grounds and more rooms than one person could ever need. Andrea met him at the door, and she didn't look like someone about to break up with her boyfriend. She looked excited, nervous, and happy all at once. Come in. I have something to show you. She led him to her office, a beautiful room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a desk that probably cost more than Gabriel's truck. There were papers spread across the desk, and Andrea gestured to them. I've been working on something, a new initiative for the company. I want to start a program that provides free outdoor equipment and experiences to underprivileged kids. Camping trips, hiking excursions, all of it completely free. I want to give kids who wouldn't normally have access to the outdoors a chance to experience what I did when I was young. Gabriel looked at the papers, at the detailed plans and budgets and timelines. Andrea, this is incredible. It was inspired by Lily, actually, watching you with her, seeing how much you do with so little. I realized that there are thousands of kids like her, kids who would love these experiences but whose parents can't afford them. I want to change that. This is going to cost a fortune. I have a fortune. I might as well use it for something good. Andrea took his hand. But here's the thing. I want you to help me run it. Gabriel stared at her. What? I want you to be the program director. You understand what these kids need. You understand the value of hard work and making do with what you have. You would be perfect for this. Andrea, I'm a mechanic. I don't know anything about running a program like this. You can learn. I'll be there to help you and we'll hire staff, but I want this to be our project, together. Andrea squeezed his hand. Say yes, please. Gabriel looked at the papers again, at the dreams and plans laid out in front of him. He thought about Lily and all the other kids who would benefit from something like this. He thought about being able to work with Andrea to build something meaningful together. Yes, he said. Yes, I'll do it. Andrea threw her arms around him, and Gabriel held her tight. They stood there in her office, wrapped up in each other, and Gabriel felt something settle in his chest. This could work. They could make this work. The program launched 3 months later. Gabriel quit his job at the garage, which was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Andrea helped him navigate the business side of things, and together they hired a small staff and started reaching out to schools and community centers. The first camping trip they organized was for 20 kids from low-income families. Gabriel and Andrea led the trip themselves, along with several experienced guides. Watching those kids experience the outdoors for the first time, seeing their faces light up around the campfire, Gabriel knew they had made the right choice. Lily came on the trip too, acting as a junior counselor despite being only 7 years old. She showed the other kids how to roast marshmallows and told them about the stars the way Andrea had once told her. Gabriel watched his daughter and the woman he loved working together, and he felt happier than he had in years. That night, after the kids were asleep in their tents, Gabriel and Andrea sat by the dying fire. The sky was clear and full of stars, just like Andrea's father had shown her all those years ago. "I have something to ask you," Gabriel said. "Okay." He pulled a small box from his pocket. It had taken him 3 months to save up for the ring inside, and it still wasn't much compared to what Andrea could afford. But it was real, and it was from his heart. "Andrea Nelson, you walked into my life during a blizzard, and you changed everything. You made me believe that I could be more than I thought I was. You gave Lily a mother figure and gave me a partner. You're my best friend and the love of my life. Will you marry me?" Andrea's hand flew to her mouth, and tears streamed down her face. Yes, of course I'll marry you." Gabriel slipped the ring onto her finger, and she kissed him like the world was ending and beginning at the same time. When they finally broke apart, Andrea was laughing and crying simultaneously. "I was going to ask you," she said. "What?" "I was going to propose. I have a ring in my bag." "I was just waiting for the right moment." She pulled out a box, and inside was a platinum band studded with small diamonds. "I guess we both had the same idea." Gabriel started laughing too, and they put his ring on his finger, and they sat by the fire wearing matching grins and holding hands. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony with just close friends and family. Thomas, who had made a full recovery from his frostbite, walked Andrea down the aisle. Lily was the flower girl, wearing a dress she had picked out herself and carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. Gabriel wore the same tux he had rented for the gala, and Andrea wore a simple white dress that made her look like something out of a dream. The ceremony was held outdoors at the campsite where Gabriel had proposed, under those same stars. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Gabriel kissed Andrea and felt like the luckiest man alive. The reception was a mix of both their worlds. There were Andrea's business associates and board members, people in expensive clothes eating catered food. But there were also Gabriel's friends from the garage and families from the outdoor program, people in regular clothes eating barbecue and dancing to country music. Somehow, it all worked. Life after the wedding was an adjustment. Gabriel moved into Andrea's house with Lily, which took some getting used to. The place was enormous compared to their old house, and Lily spent the first week exploring and discovering new rooms. But Andrea made sure they each had their own space, and slowly, the house started to feel like home. The outdoor program continued to grow. Within a year, they were running trips in 4 states and had helped over 500 kids. Gabriel loved the work, loved seeing the impact they were making. And working alongside Andrea, building something together, strengthened their relationship in ways he hadn't expected. There were still challenges. Andrea's schedule was demanding, and there were times when Gabriel felt overwhelmed by the scope of what they were doing. But they talked through every problem, made decisions together, and supported each other through the rough patches. 2 years after the blizzard, Andrea came home from a doctor's appointment with news. She was pregnant. Gabriel was going to be a father again. The pregnancy was hard on Andrea. She was sick for the first few months and exhausted for most of it. But she never complained, and Gabriel did everything he could to support her. Lily was ecstatic about having a sibling and spent hours talking to Andrea's growing belly. Their son was born on a snowy January day, exactly 2 years after the blizzard that had brought Gabriel and Andrea together. They named him Thomas Gabriel Irving, after both Thomas the driver, who had kept Andrea safe, and Gabriel himself. Holding his newborn son while his wife rested and his daughter cooed over her new brother, Gabriel thought back to that day in the truck. He had been just trying to survive, just trying to keep his daughter warm and safe. He had never imagined that helping a stranger would lead to all of this. A wife he loved beyond measure, a son, a meaningful job, a life full of purpose and joy. Andrea opened her eyes and smiled at him. "What are you thinking about?" "That day in the blizzard, when I took your hands in mine." "Best moment of my life," Andrea said softly. "Well, second best. This is the best." She gestured to their little family gathered around them. "I never would have guessed that warming your hands would lead to all this. Life's funny that way. You do one small kindness and it changes everything." Andrea reached for his free hand, and Gabriel took it, marveling at how natural it felt now. "Thank you for being you, for seeing me and not just my money, for building this life with me." "Thank you for walking into my life during a blizzard," Gabriel said, "and for never walking back out." Lily climbed onto the hospital bed next to Andrea, careful of her new brother. "Are we all going to live happily ever after now, like in the stories?" Gabriel and Andrea looked at each other and smiled. "Yes," they said together, and they did. The outdoor program continued to expand. By the time Thomas was 3 and Lily was 10, they were operating in 12 states and had helped thousands of children experience the outdoors. Gabriel ran the day-to-day operations while Andrea handled the business side, and together, they made an incredible team. They added to their family again when Andrea gave birth to twin girls, Emily and Grace, on another snowy winter day. Their house was full of noise and love and chaos, exactly the way Gabriel had always dreamed a home should be. Lily grew into a confident young woman who wanted to follow in Andrea's footsteps and run her own business someday. Thomas was obsessed with anything mechanical and loved spending time in the garage with Gabriel. The twins were still young, but they showed signs of inheriting their parents' love of the outdoors. Gabriel and Andrea made sure to take time for themselves, too. Date nights, weekend trips, quiet moments stolen between the demands of work and family. They never forgot what had brought them together or the connection they had felt in that truck during the blizzard. Every year on the anniversary of the day they met, they would drive out to a quiet spot, just the two of them, and sit in Gabriel's old truck. The truck was long retired from daily use, but Gabriel had kept it and maintained it, unwilling to let go of the vehicle that had sheltered them that day. They would sit in the front seat, heater running, holding hands, and they would talk about everything that had happened since that day. The challenges they had overcome, the joy they had found, the life they had built together. "Do you ever regret it?" Gabriel asked one year. "Marrying me instead of someone from your world?" Andrea turned to look at him, her green eyes serious. "Gabriel Irving, you are my world. You and our children. Everything else is just details." "I love you," Gabriel said, the same way he said it every day. The words never got old. "I love you too. From the moment you took my hands in yours and promised everything would be okay." "Was I right?" Andrea smiled and squeezed his hands. "You were right. Everything turned out more than okay. It turned out perfect." They sat there in the truck as snow began to fall outside, gentle flakes that reminded them of where they had started. Two people from different worlds, brought together by chance and storm, and the simple act of one person warming another's hands. It should have been impossible, but they had made it work through love and patience and unwavering commitment to each other. Gabriel thought about the man he had been before the blizzard, struggling alone, trying to be enough for his daughter. He thought about Andrea before she walked into his life, successful and wealthy but lonely. They had each been incomplete in their own way, and somehow the storm had brought them together to make each other whole. The snow fell harder, and Gabriel started the truck. Time to head home to their children, to the life they had built, to the future that stretched out before them bright and full of promise. As they drove through the falling snow, Andrea's hand in his, Gabriel said a silent thank you to whatever force had put them in each other's path that day. He had set out that morning just to take his daughter to the dentist. He had ended up finding his soulmate, his partner, his forever. life had a funny way of working out. You just had to be brave enough to reach out your hand, to offer warmth to someone in need, to trust that sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. Gabriel had warmed a stranger's hands during a blizzard, not knowing she was a billionaire. But more importantly, he hadn't known she was the love of his life. And that made all the difference. Years continued to pass, and their family grew not in size, but in love and closeness. The outdoor program became one of the most successful charitable initiatives in the country, and Gabriel and Andrea were recognized for their work helping disadvantaged children. But the awards and recognition meant less to them than the letters they received from kids whose lives had been changed by a camping trip or a hiking excursion. Gabriel watched his children grow and thrive. Lily went off to college, studying business and environmental science, determined to continue her parents' work. Thomas became a skilled mechanic like his father, but he also had a head for design that Andrea recognized and nurtured. The twins were inseparable, two peas in a pod who loved nothing more than exploring the woods behind their house. Through it all, Gabriel and Andrea's love only deepened. They had built something real and lasting, a relationship based on mutual respect, genuine affection, and shared values. The money that had once seemed like such an insurmountable barrier between them had become just another tool they used to make the world a better place. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Gabriel and Andrea threw a huge party. Friends and family came from all over, a testament to the life they had built together. At one point in the evening, Gabriel found himself standing alone on the balcony, looking out at the party, at all the people they loved gathered in one place. Andrea joined him, slipping her arm through his. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything, how far we've come, how lucky I am." "We're both lucky. We found each other against all odds." Gabriel turned to face her, taking both her hands in his the way he had done so many times over the years. "Andrea, I need you to know something. You saved my life that day just as much as I saved yours. I was drowning before I met you, just going through the motions. You gave me purpose and joy and a reason to dream bigger than just survival. You made me believe I could be more." "You always were more," Andrea said, her eyes shining with tears. "I just helped you see it. I love you. I will love you until the day I die and probably beyond that. I love you too. Always have, always will." They kissed there on the balcony while their party went on without them, two people who had found each other in a storm and built a lifetime together. When they finally pulled apart, Andrea was smiling through her tears. "Come on," she said. "We have guests to attend to. And I believe your daughter is about to make a toast." Inside, Lily stood at the front of the room with a glass of champagne in her hand. She was 20 now, poised and confident, and Gabriel's heart swelled with pride. She waited until everyone was quiet, then began to speak. "For those of you who don't know the story, my dad and Andrea met during a blizzard 10 years ago. Dad pulled over to help a stranger who was freezing to death, and that stranger turned out to be Andrea. He warmed her hands in his, kept her and our family driver safe, and basically saved their lives without expecting anything in return." Lily paused, looking at her parents. "Growing up, it was just me and Dad for a long time, and he was great, don't get me wrong. But when Andrea came into our lives, everything changed. She didn't just fall in love with my dad. She chose to love me too, to be a mother to me when my biological mom couldn't be bothered. She gave our family everything we needed and so much more." There were sniffles around the room now. Gabriel felt Andrea grip his hand tightly. "What my dad and Andrea have taught me is that love isn't about where you come from or how much money you have. It's about showing up every single day and choosing each other. It's about building something together that's bigger than either of you alone. It's about warming someone's hands when they're cold and never letting go." Lily raised her glass. "To Dad and Andrea, to 10 years of love, laughter, and happily ever after, and to many more years to come." Everyone raised their glasses and cheered. Gabriel pulled Andrea close and kissed her temple, overcome with emotion. This was his life. This beautiful, messy, perfect life. And it had all started with a blizzard and a simple act of kindness. The party continued late into the night. Gabriel danced with Andrea, with Lily, with his mother-in-law who had flown in from Arizona. He held his youngest daughters and let Thomas show off the watch he had restored from scratch. He talked and laughed and celebrated with people he loved. And through it all, he kept returning to Andrea's side, kept finding her hand with his, kept seeking out that connection that had started in a freezing truck 10 years ago. When the last guests had finally left and the house was quiet, Gabriel and Andrea stood in their bedroom, helping each other undress with the comfortable intimacy of a long marriage. "That was a good party," Andrea said, hanging up her dress. "The best," Gabriel agreed. He pulled on his pajama pants and climbed into bed. Andrea joined him, and they lay facing each other in the darkness. "Gabriel." "Yeah. If you could go back and change anything, would you?" Gabriel thought about the question. He thought about the struggles and the challenges, the times he had felt inadequate or overwhelmed. He thought about all the adjustments and compromises they had made to build their life together. "Not a single thing," he said finally. "Every moment led us here, to this. And this is exactly where I want to be." Andrea smiled and kissed him softly. "Me too. Good night, my love." "Good night." Gabriel lay in the darkness, listening to Andrea's breathing slow as she fell asleep. He thought about the younger version of himself, the man who had been driving home from the dentist with his daughter, just trying to make it through another day. That man would never have believed where life would take him. But that man had made the choice to pull over, to help a stranger, to reach out with kindness when it would have been easier to just keep driving. And that single choice had changed everything. Gabriel finally let himself drift off to sleep, warm and content, with the woman he loved in his arms. Outside, the first snow of the season was beginning to fall, soft and gentle, a reminder of where their story began and a promise of all the years still to come. The end.